something that you said there that I've definitely noticed on my own journey as well is the getting worse before you get better. And I think that, even if you're not going to therapy or whatever, I feel like it's something that you need to go through to try and improve your mental health, because to fix what's going on, like mental health, there's no blueprint. It's not written up on a whiteboard of like, here's what's wrong with you. There's problems going on in your head that need to be addressed and they need to be thought about. That might be painful, but it needs to be done. And you need to kind of really look at yourself before you can start trying to fix yourself.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the first in-person episode of the Hartrey podcast. I am joined today by Mick Hughes and Joy Quigley, who have very quickly become my best friends here. We're like a little three-way couple. I'm shamelessly third wheeling all the time, but I'm all for it. But yeah, I thought this would be a great episode to get in and, get into these in-person chats because, we can have a bit of a laugh and a little bit of a joke and hopefully Mick's nerves calm down a little bit through the episode. So first of all, I just wanted to talk about what actually brought you to Bali. Why did you want to come?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah.
So for us, with regards to our living situation and our business as well, we kind of felt like we had gotten all we could out of Ireland. With the ridiculous cost of living in Ireland, we were spending a fortune on rent. I moved out when I was 17, so I've been renting since I was 17. And I figured out I've paid something like 50,000 in rent. And yes, I have memories to show for it, but I actually have nothing to show for it per se. So we kind of had a conversation and we were like, look, we've gotten all that we can out of Ireland, business-wise, personally. We're only going to get so far here. So we just sat down, pretty sure we had a couple of drinks in us when we sat down. And we were like, feck it, we just try somewhere else. And I put up a post actually when we first came here, and it was kind of more for me personally as opposed to the two of us, but you can't heal in an environment that made you sick. So I had gotten all that I could out of Ireland and I was just like, something needs to change. And luckily you were kind of in that same headspace and we looked at the map and we went
Bali. It's almost like there's like a feeling of like keeping up with the Joneses, that in Ireland, where it's like, your neighbour buys something, you feel the need to buy something, bigger and better. And it's almost like, obviously all my best mates are still in Ireland, par Dave, but there is like this like almost toxic environment in Ireland where everybody needs to be better than somebody else. And that's something that we've found since moving over. Everyone is so friendly, everyone's so welcoming, and you just don't get that to that level in Ireland.
Yeah, I feel like that. I've after been thinking about that quite a bit since I came over here and like why that is, and I think a lot of it is down to insecurity in Ireland. Like, there's not really much going on, so anyone who's doing anything that's like a little bit outside of the loop or people chasing dreams, it's like it's nearly expected that people are going to try and tear them down. Now that's not everyone. I feel like I've had some great supportive friends in Ireland, you know what I mean? Obviously that's where everything started for all of us, you know what I mean? And I don't know about you, but I definitely wouldn't have gotten to where I was without the support of my friends and the people around me. But in general, I feel like that is kind of the trend. And just even on social media and stuff like that, like I feel like that's one of the reasons why people in Ireland find it so hard to come out of their box and start posting. And it's like they're worried about what someone who they went to school with, who they haven't seen in 5 years, is going to be thinking about what they're posting now. And I feel like change is looked at as a bad thing in Ireland. Like something, I'm sure you've heard someone say something along the lines of "you've changed," or and used as an insult. Whereas I'd look at it as change is a good thing. You know what I mean? It shows growth, and when the people do come out of their shell and start to grow, like it's more rare than you'd see less of it than what you see people just kind of staying the same, you know what I mean, like never kind of branching out. Whereas here I feel like people are more secure about themselves. Like everyone made the choice to come here and everyone is hustling, doing their own thing, so they don't feel the need to drag other people down because they have their own stuff going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you agree? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I can so relate to that as well. I come from a very small village, and it's no disrespect to the people that are there. I love where I come from. I'm a very proud Wexford woman, but I think there's a lot of close-mindedness in small communities and in Ireland as a whole, and I don't think for the majority of people we build each other up. Instead, we screenshot and put it into a group chat. Who does she think she is? Who does he think he is? Like when I first started, before we formed the Fitness HQ, I was Joy Fitness, and you were Hughes Fitness on your own. But I remember being so nervous to actually put myself out there because I was so afraid of just being hated, not being liked. People saying, who does she think she is? She comes from a small village. You know, where does she think she's coming from? And that really got into my psyche an awful lot. Like I think it took 6, 7, 8 months before I actually went on social media as myself, because I was so afraid to portray myself to these close-minded people who, instead of lifting me up, will just tear me down. And like you said, I think here in Bali, everyone was brave enough to make the move in the first place and to take themselves outside of their comfort zone. So it's like this mutual understanding with everyone that we're all hustling, we're all trying our best, keeping our head above water. And it's like this respect without anyone ever talking about it.
I don't know why it's like that in Ireland, but it literally is, as you said, like, because I know for a fact, even when I started Hughes Fitness, you know, there would have been certain posts that I would have posted, as in like, you know, and then I kind of get wind of them being sent around. You know, like I can remember my brother sending me 2 or 3, and he's not even on Instagram. You know, like, and my brother's like me, I wouldn't give a fuck about. But like, you know, obviously somebody has screenshot it and sent it to somebody else. Whereas over here, I even feel like in the few weeks that we're here, it's a little bit like, I actually don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And not to speak like I'm living here for years, but you can already kind of feel that like weight off your shoulders
Shift in
almost.
mindset
Yeah,
as well.
I don't know why it happens in Ireland so much, but it definitely does happen. As you said, it's like nobody wants to see somebody else do well, so they will try and poke a hole in every single thing they're doing. I don't know why.
That's something that I've definitely, like, I kind of copped that early on, like long before I came to Bali, anything like that. Like my kind of mindset around that was, you know, I don't have the same friends anymore. There was a lot of stuff happened, but at the time I had like my small circle of friends, and we were all like very, very close, and we we were all very, very close, and I posted whatever I wanted. If one of those people inside my circle of friends said something to me, I would take it on board, you know, and like, you know what I mean, I value their opinions. But anyone outside of that, anyone who doesn't like inspire me, motivate me, educate me, drive me forward in life, their opinions are invalid, you know, and I think that was so powerful to learn early on. And that is why, like, obviously there's been a lot of stuff happen with me. I've always been very open about everything online: bodybuilding, steroids, acne, smoking weed, taking drugs, mental health, like being depressed. I've always talked about it openly. And what I've found from doing that and putting myself out there in that sense was it made me feel more comfortable about these things. And I found, rather than putting it out there and being like, oh, these people are judging me, it completely changed it, because I had people writing to me being like, oh my God, like I've never seen someone talk about this on their story before, you know, and people I never would have thought were going through the same things, you know what I mean? But so many people are so, like they restrict themselves so much on what they put out there, but when you actually do it, the amount of people who relate to it and respect you for it is amazing.
Yeah.
And I've gotten like, I've picked up clients and stuff from stupid story. Like I remember I documented on my Instagram about when I was trying to quit weed, and I done a little talking story every morning, like explaining how I felt and all that. And there was people that I know for a fact never would have signed on with me before
Before they heard it.
signed on
Yeah.
after, because all of a sudden I was relatable.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think like the sooner people can take that step outside of their box and start to accept themselves for who they are, flaws and strengths, the sooner you can start to move forward in life and really start to grow.
Yeah.
Do you
I
agree?
feel so inspired.
Yeah, I was just
I'm
gonna-
like, go on, Dave.
yeah, that's a wrap for today.
But yeah, no, I think like it is important to kind of get these things out there and you know, let people hear it, because I think with ourselves being coaches, like it's very, especially with so many people being coaches, PTs, like kind of fitness, icon, was that the right word? Yeah,
Influencers, maybe.
Yeah, people who put out influence, yeah, online, and everyone just wants to show the good, but no one wants to show the bad.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when you can work on the bad and accept the bad and start working on the bad, that's when you really start to grow, you know. And I think you see a lot of this when clients come in and people kind of open up to you then, but you don't see a lot of it online. So what was your life like in Ireland before you came here in terms of like work? What was your routine like? What would your lifestyle have been like?
So we would have been, how long were we living together before we came over? 6 months? No, longer? 9 months? Was it?
It wasn't that long. I think it was like 9 months.
Between
maybe.
6 to 9 months, I think. One or the other. But like it was pretty boring though, wasn't it? Like we were in the same routine every single day. So, you know, we'd wake up, check-ins, work, train, and that was kind of it.
Literally, that's
Literally,
it.
like that was it. And like that sounds like, you know, I'm a big preacher of routine, and that sounds like a great routine, but there was nothing really else. I'm always saying to people, like, in Ireland, there is nothing to do but drink. Do you know what I mean? So like it got to the weekends, and if we didn't want to drink, do you know, like if we were on prep, that was last year, but like if we didn't want to have a drink, there wasn't a whole lot else to do. Do you know what I mean? And I don't like, it's not even that there's like loads of fucking stuff that we're doing here every week in terms of water parks and stuff, but there just seems to be more to see, more to, do you know what I mean, do.
Even just sitting out in the sun for a little while.
Yeah,
Sun,
you can't do that in Ireland. So our routine was pretty monotonous, wasn't it? It was kind of the same thing every single day, like.
Yeah, and what would you advise to clients and stuff who feel like they're in that kind of rut now at home? Because this is something that's been coming up for me. You know, this time of year, January, February, even March is quite like dark, gloomy times of year. A lot of people feeling down, and you know, some of the feedback I've been getting back has been, you know, just kind of doing the same things on repeat over and over and over again. What kind of advice would you give to people in a situation like that?
Well, very simply, nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you're not content with your living space, your workspace, your personal life, your professional life, whatever it might be, unless you change something, you are going to remain the same. And it doesn't have to be this massive, monumental change of jobs or change of house, or that's not always financially viable for people. Even small little things, getting up a little bit earlier, watching a sunrise every weekend, watching the sunset, practicing gratitude for what you already have, not what you don't have. And I think that's massive. A lot of people look at other people and even look at themselves, and when they look at their life as a whole, they just see what they don't have, as opposed to, do you know what? I have my health. I have fucking cup of coffee in the morning. I can make my bed. I have the ability to go to work, as opposed to saying, oh, for fuck's sake, another day of work. Do you know? And it's just small little, a switch of mindset. Sometimes you can't change bigger things like work, relationship, whatever it might be. Sometimes you can't change that, but there's a lot of small things that you can change, and the majority of it leads with your thoughts and your mindset. So if you work on changing that, it just makes everything around you that's outside of your control a little bit more bearable. Acceptance, I suppose.
Yeah, personal development can be so powerful, and I think it's one of those things that like a lot of people are reluctant to do because they're just like, you know, it's not instant payoff. Yeah. So small little things like reading a chapter of a book every day or 3 days or whatever, or getting up and going for a walk in the morning instead of sitting there scrolling on your phone. Like small little things like that are massive, because that's something that I definitely noticed from when I was in Bali the last time in June. When I got back, within the space of like 2-3 weeks, my whole life was flipped upside down. I talked to you about this, like everything that I held close to me, that I cared about, the people around me, was just, shit just hit the fan. And in those 6 months before I came here, it was literally just personal development. And I remember doing it at the time, you know, like it started off, I was very depressed, and like small little things like just getting up in the morning and going for a walk. That was like, that was where I started. Like within 10 minutes of waking up, getting up, going for a walk, and, you know, not lying around in bed. And then that quickly came like, that quickly turned into like, you know, coming back and then listening to a podcast, or coming back and reading a book, and then that turned into, you know, putting more hours into my work or working on other things, like, you know what I mean. And it's a very slow process, I feel like, personal development, but it's so important. And like, that is one thing that I feel like is also lacking in Ireland, is like the amount of people who do this. Now, again, not everyone, but I know here, every second person you talk to like reads or tries to educate themselves or listens to podcasts and stuff like that. Whereas if you said that to someone at home, you get called a fucking nerd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, so little things like that, I think, is another big difference. But
It's even like the whole, it's like the whole concept, to go back to what you were saying and yourself. It's like, we learn to crawl before we can walk. And I think for some people, if you were to say, you need, like if somebody was like, I want to work on myself, and you said pick up reading or walking or whatever it may be, I know, certain people in Ireland would be like, I don't have the time to read fucking 10 chapters a night or whatever it may be, but it could literally be, as you said, 5 pages a day or 5-minute walk in the morning, and then just build on them habits. Whereas I think in Ireland in particular, we're just completely slating Ireland here.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of people do want to work on themselves, but they almost see like the end goal, and they're like, I don't have 2 hours a day to meditate, where it doesn't need to be that.
It's baby steps.
Yeah.
I started off with meditation again in those 6 months before I came here, and I literally started with 3 minutes in the night time. Then I started doing 3 minutes in the morning, 3 minutes in the evening. Then I went to 5. Then I went to 10, and like, you just build it up like that.
I was so bad at it. Remember at the start,
Yeah.
Joy introduced me to meditating, man, and I used to be sitting there, and I'd be like, Joy would be like, breathe, and I'd be like, bollocks, there's no chicken in the fridge. Do you know what I mean? And like 10 minutes later, she'd be like, well, how'd you find it? And I was like, yeah, grand. I'd be out in the car, I'd be like, fucking need to text him back. Fucking, there's no fucking chicken, beef mince. Do you know? But now I'm like, I'm getting better at it now.
Yeah, I remember the first time we used to go for swims. I used to swim every day in Ireland, every day, rain, hail, snow. And I remember introducing you to sea swims. I think I had worked up my tolerance at this point, so I think I was like on 8-9 minutes. This was like your first time, so I think you were like 3 or 4, which was really good.
Which
for the
I thought
first
was
time.
decent.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
And then we drank some cacao after, and I was like, right, do you want to meditate? And you were like, yeah, can you guide me through the meditation? And I was like, 100%. So here was me really chill, inhale and exhale. And next of all, I heard this. I was like, so sometimes you can't switch off, and other times you just fall asleep. Like.
Yeah, it still kind of happens, because I went through a phase of like not being able to sleep in Ireland, and putting on like meditation, like deep sleep meditation, and like sticking the phone under the pillow. So then when I started meditating with Joy, I was like, it's the same thing, same principle, like I'm supposed to be sleeping here. Well, obviously not.
And your coaching, your ethos, is that is it?
Ethos, yeah.
Ethos is where mindset meets fitness. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I'll take a small bit, and then I'll let you take over. So I suppose like when me and Joy decided to come together, we're two very, very, very different styles of coaching. I think all of our clients will agree that, it's like a good cop, bad cop. One's a little bit more approachable. And
Guess which one?
And the other one will kind of get you in line a little bit quicker, is kind of the best way to say it. But we kind of found that, as an online coach, the majority of people as online coaches, we find, will just, it's solely like physical. I want to look a certain way, and that's it. I want a fucking big shoulders, or I want a six-pack, or whatever it may be. And when we decided to come together, we were like, okay, we have a coach, being Joy, that is so focused on mindset, still gets great results, physical results, but is so focused on mindset, whereas I would have never had that. So like, I can remember clients coming to me before we got together being like, I'm suffering with anxiety, or, I'm depressed, or whatever it may be. And my answers were just, being honest, like not fobbed off answers, but, they wouldn't have had the educational background that Joy has now, and the experience that you've gone through now. So I feel like when we decided to come together, we were like, this is a really good package and program that we can give to people, because yes, we're getting them in the best physical condition, but without sounding cliche, they've got a bulletproof mindset coming out the back of it. And it's funny, because we have like the team of clients we have now, we just have certain clients that we do. Is if you get me, like, we'll have, let's say, John from around the corner, who is, I want to get abs, or, I want big shoulders. And then we have Mary from the other side of the road, who's like, I want to just work on my mindset. So we kind of know, okay, this is your client, this is my client, even though everything is the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of why.
Yeah, because we were coaches separately for a long time. You were a coach for 5-6 years, and I was a coach for 3 years, I think. And then obviously Mick fell madly in love with me.
That's not what happened.
And we got together, and the topic of moving came up, and we were like, what's the point in doing check-ins separately when we could combine our clients, get more clients under the one roof? That would help our travel. So we decided to come together and form the Fitness HQ, which, fun fact, by the way, Dave,
yeah.
what does the
HQ.
HQ stand for?
Headquarters.
No.
Hughes and
It's
Quigley.
Hughes and Quigley.
Fuck off.
That's what it is.
I swear to
I
God.
swear on your life. I swear to God. And nobody knows this. But if you, like, it's Hughes and Quigley, and the logo is both
The Fitness HQ.
the Fitness HQ.
So everyone always thinks it's the Fitness,
Fitness
headquarters,
headquarters.
Yeah.
which, okay, that does work too. But
But
it's
it's
actually
a play on the surnames.
play on the surnames, isn't it?
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Didn't know
Very
that.
smart.
Yeah.
That is information limited to Dave's podcast. But when we formed the Fitness HQ, we kind of figured that we have very, very different styles of coaching. How are we going to make it work together? So, like Mick said, I always got results that my clients wanted. I never once posted a transformation. Rather, you were very transformation based, and that's how you got your clients. My clients came to me because, yes, I'll get you in the physical condition, but I was so heavily based off mindset, purely through my own experience. Like, I remember having a six-pack and I was at my most depressed. And I wanted to change people's mindset that you don't chase a physique, chase acceptance and confidence and love for yourself, and then everything else just kind of falls into place. And then you're very, like, I admire how your quality of life is when it comes to training. You have such a high standard when it comes to training that I do have, but not as much as him. And I think that's where it mixes really well, because if someone comes to me and says, I didn't get to the gym all week, I'd be like, oh my God, you poor devil, are you okay? Whereas Mick pulls you up and makes you accountable for it. And I think it's a really good mix of having the both. And I think our clients would say the same.
Yeah, it's hard. I kind of feel like I used to be like Mick, and now I'm more like you. Because, like, obviously with the bodybuilding background, like that's the way that coaching is. Like that style of coaching is just like, you know, you turn up, you get shit done, no excuses, you know. Whereas now, from everything I've been through and my own experience, like, it would be the same. And it's like working on mental health, working on mindset and stuff like that. And it can be a little bit frustrating at times because, like, you have the two of you together now, whereas I'm like say stuff like that, like showing off transformations, and I value the mental transformations much more than the 12-week transformation I post up on my page. You know what I mean? Someone who is in the depths of depression, and then a couple of weeks later you see them and they're happy, they're loving life, they're smiling all the time, and they're just a different person. Like, I value that a lot more, and that's kind of where I'm kind of trying to go. But that's something I'm struggling with, is like, well, does it look like from the outside that, you know what I mean, I'm not actually doing anything, I'm not getting results? Because, you know, for people who are coming to me like that, because I talk a lot about this kind of stuff online, and I feel like what you put out online is what you're going to attract, you know what I mean? And so if someone comes to me and they're like, you know, I know that they're in a bad thing, like in a bad place, I'm not going to be like, you know, what the fuck is this excuse? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why aren't you getting this done, or whatever? And some weeks, like, you know, where I feel like I need to kind of push them a little bit hard. It's not just like, you know, me being like, okay, this person needs to change this. I'm like, okay, like, is this person going to be able to mentally handle these changes on top of everything else? And it's kind of something I'm still trying to kind of find my feet with. But, you know, it's a new challenge for me, I suppose, you know what I mean, and a new area to kind of learn, because I've done the bodybuilding, I've done that style of coaching, and now I want to, you know what I mean, like, expand a little bit, and hopefully it'll start clicking into place a little bit more down the line.
No, it will, definitely. I think it's hard when you're more mindset based, because you don't have the pictures. Like, no one can take a picture to prove that their mindset has improved. You know, like with a physical transformation, you can do it before and after. With a mindset or mental health transformation or journey, you can't do it before and after. Like, it's not fucking possible. Like, am I allowed to curse on the podcast? Yeah. Fuck.
Bollocks.
It's not fucking possible. Like, so.
Fuck.
Bollocks. But I think as a coach, like you saying, you know, oh, I hope people don't think I'm not doing anything or I'm not busy. You have enough validation based off the clients that you've worked with and the people that you've changed people's lives. You mightn't even realise it, but you have changed people's lives, their outlook, their mental health, their mindset. You've improved the quality of their life. There mightn't be a picture to put up on your story for marketing, but that's enough validation in itself. And if people look at your stories and think that he's not busy, tell him to fucking reach out and book a call then. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know I feel like you're one of my closest friends now. Being your close friend, I know the kind of coach that you are and the kind of human that you are. Don't look for validation online to see if people fucking think you're busy or not, because I know what you do is changing people's lives. And your voice is changing people's perceptions, opinions, outlook, mindset. So fuck your fucking transformations. Like, honestly, like, you're incredible as you are.
Thank you. Well, like, yeah, we will get
He's
there.
blushing, by the way.
We will get there. But look, I suppose a good way to kind of spin off this topic and something that we can kind of talk about while we're on it is our own mental health as well as our clients and stuff like that. Like, I know I've definitely suffered in the past, Joy. I know you have. Mick, I don't know, have you?
I haven't. You know what? I think the fairest way for me, like, I haven't enough to justify. I feel like I'm taking away from somebody like your own journeys. If I was to say I have, I think I've explained this to Joy before. Like, yeah, I've had bouts of anxiety. Do you know what I mean? As I'm sure everybody has, but I don't think it warrants enough. I don't think it's fair for me to say I have mental health issues, and I don't even like using the word issues because I feel like it takes away from somebody that actually has depression or, you know, an everyday level of anxiety. So I think I'm lucky enough to say that I haven't, and I also don't think it's fair for me to say I have on people that actually have.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can
That's
kind of
something to
describe
be-
it.
It sounds like you're kind of ashamed of that.
No,
like,
no,
you know
no.
what I
But
mean?
yeah, no, that's, you're almost like you're nearly, yeah, no, that's kind of the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. And Joy, like, what's your experience with it?
With mental health.
Mental health, yeah.
I am the poster girl for mental health, Dave. So back when I was 15, that was the first time I heard the word mental health. I was brought to our local GP because I was just in a state of desperation, but I didn't know what it was. I wasn't eating, but then I was binge eating. I wasn't sleeping, then I was sleeping all day. I didn't want to live, but it wasn't manifesting in suicide. I just didn't want to be here anymore. So I was brought to the GP and he said, I think you have depression. I was like, that's ironic. My name is Joy, but okay. And then when I was 17, I was brought on medication. So I was put on medication, but at the time, I was so immature, I was so young, I had such little knowledge of what it was that I had, that I took them and thought to myself, I'm just going to be happy one day. I didn't know what depression was. I knew I had it, I didn't know what it was. And I put all my weight and all my hope on this pill. And of course the pill didn't fucking work, because you have to work on your mental health. It's just one tool to keep your head above water. You can't just rely on that one tool. So I took myself off medication, and I ended up getting referred to a psychologist, and then I kind of ignored it for a couple of years. I went into an absolute spiral of depression. I don't want to go into the details.
Of course, yeah.
But it was just it was horrendous, a couple of years for me. Mainly because I knew I had depression, I knew I was suffering, I knew I was so low, but I was doing fucking nothing for it. And I just thought that this was my life and this is just how life is. And then it just came to a point where I was like, if I don't change something, I'm not going to be here for much longer. So I need to change. Like I said earlier, nothing changes if nothing changes.
Yeah.
So I did a couple of rounds of counselling with different counsellors. I started sea swimming. I tried to start meditating. And then I eventually got to a psychotherapist. And I got to a therapist. And at the start, it made me feel worse. I was like, fuck this shit. But I think it's because I was so stubborn that I just wasn't accepting anything he was saying. So it got worse before it got better. And then all of a sudden, it just started to make sense. And I was in therapy for a year and a half. It was actually during COVID. That's when I went to therapy, because COVID was the lowest point for me.
Yeah.
And I've said this to you before, and I'm going to say it to you. I think I've said it to you before, but I'm going to say it on your podcast. If I know how fucking horrendous COVID was for every family, every person, every healthcare worker, it absolutely destroyed lives, destroyed the quality of our life. It had so much detrimental effects on everyone across the world. For me, lockdown saved my life. And I think if I wasn't forced into a position where I had to be still, where I had to do nothing, I had to spend time with myself, I had to slow down, I truly don't think I'd be here. So for me, COVID was a real kick up the arse to be like, you need to fix your head.
Yeah.
So I went on that journey, and I'm continuing to go on that journey. I don't think I'll ever be cured of depression, but I'm doing little things every day where I'm supporting myself. And I always say that every time I feel really, really low, it's never as low as the last time, because I'm building resilience through the support tools that I use. And through reaching out. I was someone who suffered in silence for years, whereas now I'd text my best friend and I'd be like, hey, just cry with me. Just tell me life is shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Something that you said there that I've definitely noticed on my own journey as well is the getting worse before you get better. And I think that, you know, even if you're not going to therapy or whatever, I feel like it's something that you need to go through to try and improve your mental health, because to fix what's going on, like mental health, there's no blueprint. It's not written up on a whiteboard of like, here's what's wrong with you. There's problems going on in your head that need to be addressed and they need to be thought about. That might be painful, but it needs to be done. And you need to kind of really look at yourself before you can start trying to fix yourself.
Yeah.
And I learned that through from years of smoking weed. Like that was it wasn't the only reason, you know what I mean? I was addicted to it as well, but sleep was a big thing for me, right? If I wasn't smoking weed in the nighttime, I would be lying there for hours and hours and hours, and like, I suppose that's part of the reason why I became so reliant on it, because I didn't want to lie there and think about these things that were coming into my head. So weed was a way to just switch it off, you know what I mean? And I could just go straight to sleep. And in those 6 months that I was staying in Tremor, I had nothing to do except like whether it was in the night time or during the day or whatever, my business, I was literally just had to like start my business from scratch again, because everything that happened with my old business partner and everything. And during the day, I just had to sit there and think about these things, you know what I mean? This is when I started like listening to podcasts. I went balls deep into Diary of a CEO, kind of hearing people's stories about that was really good for me. And when you start, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier on, like working on yourself, trying to read or listen to podcasts and stuff like that, it gives you a different perspective, a different way of thinking about things, and you get to hear from someone who's on the other side of it. And without addressing those problems, you can't figure out what direction you need to go to try and fix it.
Yep.
And yeah, so that is one thing that I would say is like it's painful at the start and it gets worse before it gets better. But it is an absolute necessity to look within yourself and try and figure these things out so that you can start healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, you have to feel to heal. You have to feel shit to heal from the shit. You have to feel sad to heal from the sadness. You have to feel every shit emotion that comes up to heal from that. And it's not easy, and it can break a lot of people. It certainly broke me, but it's just like, you have to see the end goal. I don't want to live this way anymore. So I need to sit through this. I need to heal through this. I need to go through this to come out the other side, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time when you go on that self-development journey, whether it's you're listening to podcasts, whether you have a therapist, a counsellor, whatever it might be, a lot of the stuff just articulates what you already know. Did you find that? Like, I found when I was in therapy or I listened to podcasts, so many moments I was like, I fucking know that already. That makes sense. I just needed someone or something to tell me that I'm not batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And it actually makes sense. Like,
Yeah, and again, like that's what I found, that like that feeling was what I got off the podcast and off reading books. It's like, it's stuff I know in my head, but when it's like phrased a certain way back to you, it just makes it click and stick a little bit more in your brain. And yeah, but like even that, like I think that's why it's so important to, like everyone says, reach out and talk to someone. Like I think, again, just from my own experience with it, when you talk to people, like before you have the conversation, like you're like, oh, what's this gonna do? All I'm gonna be doing is like fucking complaining to this person or whining to this person. But I think when you start saying stuff out loud, like you don't know the things that's gonna come out. And like how I find it myself is like, as the words are coming out, I'm figuring it out myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't like pre-think this conversation before, but as it comes out, just in the natural flow of conversation, things start clicking in my head. And that's why I love podcasting, because like conversations like this
Just flows. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I didn't think we were going to be talking about stuff like this on it, but it just comes out, and then you start to understand it a little bit better, and it gives you kind of things to think about then yourself in your own time.
Yeah.
But when you're just trapped in your own thoughts, it's very hard to identify these things.
Yeah.
I think that's why I love journaling so much. And you've started
it,
journaling
yeah.
recently, yeah. Because I find it just takes like this fuzziness from your head and puts it on paper. And whether you want to read back, whether you want to reflect or just leave it there, it just takes a bit of a weight off, because it's like you've almost downloaded it from your brain, put it on paper, and can make sense of what's going on, as opposed to just letting it run outside of your awareness completely. Do you know?
Yeah. It's something that I've been putting off for so long now, is the journaling. I need to get on it. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about it. Just last thing I'd like to touch about on this. What is your opinion on antidepressants now, after being through the journey? Where would you stand with it?
I think use whatever tools are available to help you. But I think if you're going to go on antidepressants, make sure you're not doing it to mask the problem. Make sure you have educated yourself, and make sure you're using it amongst a multiple of tools. Antidepressants are fantastic. A lot of my friends are on them. Again, I was on them. They didn't personally work for me. But antidepressants will help. They'll take the edge off the pain, but you have to be working on yourself as well. So I think before you are going to take them, sit down and say, okay, if I take these, I need to also have a counsellor, have a therapist, listen to whatever it might be, and use it as a tool alongside another tool of healing, and not just rely solely on that. Because I think if you put all your hope on this pill, how can you ever remove yourself from that?
Yeah, I would say, like, the way I would have phrased it, that I've used from my own experience, is kind of the same thing, but just phrased a little bit differently. I use it as a crutch to get out of like a really hard time.
Yeah.
And exactly as you were saying, like, while, like, if I hit kind of like a low point in my life through external factors, you know, I'll use antidepressants for a couple of weeks, being very aware of like how they're making me feel, and with the intention of coming off them as soon as possible. And during that time, I'll be doing things like I was doing, like reading books, listening to podcasts, going for walks, stuff like that, trying to like strengthen my mindset. Because I find with antidepressants is the lows aren't as low, but the highs also aren't as high.
Yeah.
And I felt quite numb off them. Like nothing really excited me. You know, if I was going out, meeting the lads or something like that, or even going on a holiday or something, you know, it was just.
Well, that's what
level.
they do. It just dulls you.
Yeah.
You know.
And I like, if you're not aware of this, and because I feel like some people are more in touch with like how they feel than others, you know what I mean? And if you're not aware of this and you're just taking antidepressants, you just accept that that's the norm.
Yeah.
And as you said, just like using it as like just being on them constantly and not working on yourself outside of that just becomes the normal. And it's quite, looking back on it, like it's hard, like, although they do help, it's also hard feeling like that, of like not getting excited over things, not being as happy over things and stuff like that. And like now that I'm over here, and I've been off them now a good while, like, you know, 3 of us are going away at the weekend. I'm buzzing for that. You know what I mean? I'm really excited about that. Like, I would say that I'm more excited about that trip than I was about moving to Bali when I was on antidepressants, even though like that move was a much bigger thing.
Yeah.
That feeling of excitement and, you know what I mean, looking forward to things, and like all that is like much more. If I'm going out having a conversation with someone, I can be much more chirpy. I'm like laughing more. Again, like 3 of us in that group chat last night, I was howling laughing, like, and I never would have been like that on antidepressants. You know, so there's good and bad, but yeah, it sounds like our opinion is kind of the same. And you're very lucky that, you know, in your relationship you have Mick, who's, you know, mentally in like a great space and stuff like that. And then, you know, if you're struggling, because what I found in like previous relationships is like, if you're with someone and the two of you are struggling, it's very hard to support each other in a situation like that, because you need to be able to support yourself to support someone else. And that's why I think like this personal development is so important, like not only just for coaches or people into fitness or whatever, like, but the more you work on yourself, the more you can give back to people.
I think I'm lucky because like I definitely wouldn't have said I was mentally strong up until I met Joy, which is probably unfair on Joy because I probably took water from an half empty glass already, if that makes sense. Sorry about that. But like, you know, like Joy introduced me, like I went to therapy for probably 6 or 7 months, I think it was. But up until I met Joy, I wouldn't have ever even thought about that. I would have seen therapy as a weakness, which is so wrong. And this is coming from somebody who went to therapy for a few months. But I always would have seen going to therapy as you've obviously got yourself in such a low position that you need somebody there. And I wasn't necessarily in a low position. You know, there was 1 or 2 things that had happened when I was younger and stuff that I wanted to kind of go and kind of maybe address. But I definitely think, you know, Joy has to thank for me being in a position where I can now listen better. Give advice, maybe not so much, but listen better. But yeah, so thanks for that.
I think like you don't have to be depressed to go to therapy. I think it's something that everyone should do.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
it should be compulsory.
Yeah.
I think everyone should have a therapist because we all need a good bitch. We all need a good moan to someone who knows nothing.
Yeah.
You don't know who I'm talking about. You don't know what's going on, and just to offload. Everyone needs someone to offload to.
But it even brings up, like, you know, not to get into it, but, you know, my dad died when I was 12 and there was a few issues, let's say, that would have been like festering in my own mindset for years. Like I went when I was 27, so this is 15 years later. You know, and it wasn't until a few sessions in with my therapist where I was like, and you made a good point there where you almost go on a ramble, but it's like an educational ramble. You know, and there would have been a few times I went in there and she was like, you know, you feel down this week. Why do you feel that way? You know, maybe it's something to do with a family member. Let's address that. And it was almost just like, you know, I just went on a ramble, blah, 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 blah. And then she's like, okay, maybe this is why you feel the way based on what happened when you were 12. Do you know what I mean? That's why I think it's so important for everybody to have, as you said, a complete foreigner that's in the room that is like, you don't know exactly who I'm talking about, you know nothing about me, but you've got the tools to listen and to allow me to elaborate without like poking at me to talk.
Yeah. And just while we're on the topic, for anyone who's listening who hasn't tried therapy, it's very important to find the right therapist, because if you go once and you don't get on with your therapist, like I feel like that happens to a lot of people and they're like, therapy is shit, it doesn't work. It's like the same as finding a coach. You know what I mean? There's gonna be coaches who suit you based on your style, your lifestyle, what you want to achieve, and it's the same with therapists. Like it's very important to find the right one.
Big time.
Yeah, I spoke about this in the last episode of my podcast. Plugging my podcast on my podcast, how unprofessional. But I spoke about how I was very lucky. I found the first lad that I met, I knew he was going to change my life. However, I went through a couple of counsellors because when you're sitting in a room across the table, it's not natural to trust that person straight away. It's not natural to be comfortable. It's not natural to want to be open with someone. So you do have to shop around. Some people you won't like, but don't let it deter you off the journey. You just have to find the right one, like a partner. You just have to find the right one.
But do you know what I think is as well is like so important when it comes to, this is kind of off topic but slightly the same, like when it comes to therapy and kind of allowing yourself to be put in a position where you are vulnerable, because I suppose you are. But like I can remember I have a group of mates at home, there's 6 of us, 6 lads, and I can remember I don't know what the occasion was, but all 6 of us had met for the first time in a few months, and I said, you know, to the 5 of them, oh, I've been in therapy for the last few months. And I can remember the initial reaction across them all was like, geez, that's, you know, is everything okay? There must be something wrong. And it was complete foreign to them, as in like the thoughts of one of the lads going to a therapist. And 3 out of the 5 text me separately over the coming 7 days, being like, where was it? How much was it? Did you find it helped? And it always has me thinking, like, you know, nobody wanted to say there and then, where were you doing this, or who was she? But it was comfortable for them to do it, you know, without anybody else knowing. So know that I suppose it is normal. Do you know what I mean? But it is definitely something that I feel like everybody should do at some stage in their lives, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. And your relationship, you seem to have a very healthy, you know what I mean? A healthy relationship.
You mean the 3 of us? Like
the 3 of us, yeah. But like, it's really refreshing to see, especially when you have like the business together and it seems to click so well. Like, how? Like, what would you say is like healthy about your relationship? What makes it work?
It wasn't always like that.
No.
No, it definitely wasn't always like that. You know, I suppose when we got together, myself and Joy are quite different and very similar in ways. And I think what makes it work now is communication, 100%. It's so fucking important. A level of trust. I think, again, communication is a big one, trusting each other. Being able to, I think it's so important for any couple that are out there to have their own things in life. So like we work together, we fucking train together, we sleep together, we eat together. But, you know, I can still, whether it's in Bali, meet you for a coffee, or, you know, whether it's at home, Joy still goes and does stuff for her friends, or I do stuff with my friends. And I think that's so important to, yes, have your life and your business and your relationship together, but also respect each other enough to be like, okay, you go and do whatever you need to do. Do you know that kind of way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I think for us, what worked is when we met, and again, when Mick fell madly in love with me,
Bollocks.
we just complemented each other's lives already. We didn't have to change our morals, change our values, change anything. We just complemented already. And I have a very separate life, and he has a very separate life, and then we have a life together. And I think that's what makes it work. In our life together, we work together, we train together, we sleep together, we eat together. But then I have my separate life where I have my own things on the side, and he has his own separate life. And it's like when two people work and do everything together, it's nice to go away for an hour, 2 hours, a weekend, a week, whatever it might be, and come back and have something outside of our relationship to talk about and to work on. And
I think we're very lucky as well, and I get this is something that, like, you know, we've spoken about ourselves, but, you know, for two online coaches to get in a relationship and completely like understand each other from the get-go, because, you know, I know I was in a relationship before that, you know, the thought of being with somebody who was PTing women would have been a massive issue. Do you know what I mean? The thoughts of being with a coach who was getting check-in photos from females and males was a massive issue. And I think, you know, for myself and Joy, when we first got together, there was none of that, and that kind of allowed me to have a sense of relief, but then it allowed me to kind of give more to the relationship because I wasn't given, you know, that kind of way before. So yeah, it just clicks, it just works.
yeah, but at the start we went through fucking hell. So I think if we didn't go through that, we probably wouldn't be together.
And it's funny because, like, going back to what you guys were saying about mental health, where you need to go through that struggle. I know it's not the same magnitude, but you need to go through that struggle in order to grow and come out the other end. We're now thankful that we went through that shit at the very start, because it was shit at the very start. Not shit as in the relationship, but we went through a lot of shit at the start. Yeah,
I think like going back to the point of communication, like every couple argues, every couple is going to argue, but what you take from that argument, you know what I mean? Like I feel like from relationships I've been in where I didn't do this, and then relationships I've been in where I did do this, like a key part of that was like you have your argument, understand that, okay, the other person is getting annoyed for some reason. Now, some people just go off the handle for fucking just shit, but like for a lot of stuff, there's some reason why that person's upset, and there's some reason why the other person is reacting to that person being upset, or vice versa, and being able to sit down in a calm environment and be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling, this is my side of things, you know, this is, I would appreciate if you were to work on this, or to do this, or try to avoid doing this, or whatever. Whereas, again, being in relationships where I didn't do this, it was, you'd have the argument, it would blow up, you'd apologize, and then you don't talk about it again because you don't want to resurface stuff. And kind of same as coming back to the mental health stuff that I was talking to, is you have to address the things to know what needs to be worked on, what needs to be fixed, and all that. And just again, to reiterate one of the points that you made of like having your own life, that was also something I fell into in the past, was not like going into a relationship and having nothing outside of the relationship. And when you're relying someone solely for happiness, excitement, motivation, discipline, literally everything, you're relying on that one person, it becomes very toxic very quick.
Yeah.
And that's something I feel like people need to hear. And I think that I've really only learned this by going off, working on myself, and kind of becoming happy by myself. Because something I see so often is like, so when I came out of my last relationship, I like literally didn't talk to anyone, didn't text anyone, didn't go on dates, nothing for 6-7 months, and like literally just kind of learned to be happy by myself. But you know, you see it when people come out of a relationship and they're so used to having someone there for those things, the happiness, motivation, like excitement to make them feel good about themselves. And then when they break up, it's you don't really understand yourself, what you need, and then you're jumping at the first person who can give you that stuff.
Yeah.
And this is where I think like why there's so many toxic relationships, because you're jumping into a relationship because you're settling, like you're craving that feeling again, as opposed to now, like I'm completely happy on my own, completely self-reliant. I'm just as happy when I'm on my own as when I'm out with people doing things.
Yeah.
And I feel like my standards have raised an awful lot, because I can identify, like in situations where I wouldn't have before, I can be like, okay, this person, it's easier to see if this person is going to be a positive in my life or a negative.
Yeah.
As before, I would have kind of settled and I wouldn't have really looked at that, and I would have just jumped straight into it.
Yeah.
So again, just kind of coming back to the whole personal development thing, like it's why it's so important.
I think a lot of people rely on their partner for everything. And the thing is, you're responsible for your thoughts. You're responsible for your feelings. Nobody else can make you happy but you. And I think, I'm sure I'm guilty of this. I know I'm guilty of this in previous relationships. I relied on my partner to make me happy. And I because of my mental health at the time, I could never find happiness in myself. We don't rely on each other for anything, because we know if, we're taking a day to ourselves or we're doing our own life for a bit, it's you that's responsible for that, nobody else. And I think a lot of people go into relationships craving something that they don't have. But you have to, again, personal development, find it in yourself before you try find it in anyone else. Because that means no matter what happens, you're always going to be with you. You can rely on you. You're responsible for your thoughts and feelings, and you can ultimately make yourself happy.
Yeah. It's hard to get to that point. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
It is, like, because, again, like, you have to have those conversations with yourself. You need to look and, like, even just, like, to learn from each relationship, like, and, there's nothing wrong with kind of, like, getting out of one relationship and then getting with someone else or whatever, but if you aren't learning the lessons from your last relationship, it's just, you're just repeating the cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to finally get to a point where, you do find the right person, you need to go through the bad to kind of get to the good, but you also need to understand where you went wrong in a relationship and where you can improve for the next one.
Yeah, I think it's so important, as you said there, like there's definitely a lesson in every relationship, but you need to be willing to sit with each other and kind of talk about it, because I think even coming from my old relationship where there wouldn't have been that level that how do I phrase this in a nice way? There wouldn't have been that level where like I probably needed to spend so much time or like a lot of time at all. So when I got with Joy at the start of the relationship, I think I would have had this idea in my head where, I love this girl, I want to spend so much time with her, and it took probably Joy and me both having a conversation, but again, Joy's knowledge on the whole side of things, where it was like, okay, yes, we want to spend this time with each other, but it is important that I also have my own time. And it's important that you also have your own time. And it's funny because now when I look back at my mindset at the start of the relationship, I would have been like, you couldn't possibly have kept that up. Do you know what I mean? And not that I was like fucking hiding in her wardrobe like she was getting ready.
You weren't far from it.
Or like, lying in the back of the car while she was getting in.
We'd go on a date, right? Do you remember? We'd go on a date and...
Careful now.
I'd be like, we'll go out at 6 o'clock.
Well, that's separate. This is
He'd rock up 4:45. Like.
Well, I'm like that. And I absolutely
very punctual.
fucking hate people being late. And there's two things I hate in life. It's when two forks get stuck together. That's a separate thing. Right? But this is a pet hate, and it even irks me
and
now.
I drive you mad.
Do you know when like somebody either walks in front of you slowly, or else you're on an escalator and you want to get by them? Oh, get out of the way! Like, so that idea of like, someone like pulling you back, like, let me go. So if we're getting ready to go out, and like this was at the start of the relationship, I can remember getting ready, going over hair gel. I smell like a fucking Hughes handbag. And I walk into the room and Joy's like, I'll be 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, that is painful.
But yet he's 50 minutes early, like, do you know what I mean?
So I got to a stage, like I can remember when we used to smoke cigarettes, and I get to a stage where like I drive over, and in my head I'd be like, right, she said 6, she'll probably be ready at 5:30. I'll go over for 5:15. I'll have a cigarette. Now looking back, I've now arrived 45 minutes early to the girl's house who's going to be 30 minutes late. So I'm an hour and a half there, stuck in limbo of pure anger. So yeah, if you're listening to this, respect their time.
Or the same, do you remember when we used to go to the gym? So we used to have clients at 6 in the morning, and I used to live 7 minutes from the gym. And this used to cause war every single morning. So we'd get up, right? I don't wear makeup, so I used to just throw clothes on and go out the door. And it took me like 3 minutes to put clothes on me. So I'd get up at respectfully 10 to 6, and I'd be there for 6 o'clock.
Oh no.
This mad fucker would wake up at 5:15 and leave for a 7-minute journey at 5:30. I'm like, what are we supposed to do for the 23 spare minutes? Like,
But that to me makes so much more sense for a mental calmness.
I'm the exact same as you.
100%.
no, I'm
remember-
like, I'd be there when I'm there.
Even with clients, like when we were working in that gym and we'd have clients back to back. So you could have, let's say, 4 clients back to back. Like the thoughts of finishing a client at 2 minutes to, and then another one sitting there waiting for you is just like, that is not an option. So I would sooner have like them booked where you have, even if it's too long, 30 minutes in between or 15 minutes in between, so that I can just have a few minutes to be like, okay, I'm ready for the next one.
Yeah, I would have been the exact
Definitely.
same. When I was working in Bendon, used to be open in the gym. I used to have to be there at 5:45, but I'd get up at 4:30, and I'd always get there a half hour early. So I'd be there at 5:15 and just sit there drinking a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? Like mentally preparing. And yeah, I don't get people like you.
It's chaos.
Well, it depends on the situation. So, like, if I was doing something like, like going to an interview or meeting a friend for a coffee or whatever, I would be early. But for stuff that at that time in my life was so mundane, I was kind of like, oh, fuck, I'll be all right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It depends on the situation,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it does.
But
yeah,
I
I
didn't
suppose.
know at the time that annoyed you so much, so thank you for communicating that with me.
Yeah.
2 years on.
Communication is key.
It's so funny. We do pride ourselves on communication, and we do have fantastic communication, but sometimes we lose it. Do you know some of our arguments to be like, we look back on the arguments and we just laugh and we're like, what the fuck was that about? Do you ever have the moments though, do you know, when even with yourself, you get so worked up in yourself, and then on reflection, it's like, what the fuck was I even on about, lads? Do you remember that time I called you a pig?
Yeah.
I was so annoyed. I don't know what it was. I can't remember. But I remember being like, you're such a pig.
And we actually laughed about it. We laughed about it like an hour later. We made up, and I was like, you fucking call me a pig.
I was like, sorry for calling you a pig.
Oh,
Stop this.
right. Well, we'll wrap things up there. Guys, thank you so much for coming in and having a chat. I'm sure we'll have more of these over the next kind of couple of months or
Yep.
whatever. I feel like there's lots of things we can touch on. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you
very much for
having
having
us.
us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bosh.